Hi all, welcome to session 23 of Get Metadata Activity. In session 22, we saw exist property of Get Metadata Activity. So using exist property, you can check the existence of a file, and based on that, you can run your pipeline. And in this session, we are going to see another property of Get Metadata Activity that is called as child items. Child items are basically going to be the children of a folder. So for example, when you are working with ADLS Gen 2 account, and in that you have a directory structure, and if you want to check what are the components of that particular directory, how many files are there, what are the names of the files, how many folders are there, is there any subfolder, etc. So you can use child items for this purpose. Okay, so let me go to my data factory studio and I will show you how to use the child items. Okay, so as you can see, we have created all these pipelines, and in this pipeline we saw our exist. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm going to rename it first so that we are clear with the purpose of the pipeline. Okay, so here we have demonstrated exist property of the get metadata activity. Now we are going to create a new pipeline. So in this, I'm going to use child items property. So I'm going to say pl get metadata child items. Okay, and I'm going to first use a get metadata activity. Okay, and let me use the set variable as well so that we can store our output from the get metadata activity. So here I'm going to connect these two, and I'm going to say get metadata get child items. I will say set child items. Okay, now let me just create a variable child items array, and let me choose data type as array. Okay, so we are going to use this variable in this set variable activity, but for now let me go back to get metadata, and in the settings I'm going to use the data set. Okay, let me remove it and put a space here. Okay, so it's not empty, there is just a blank space. And what I'm going to do is, if I go to my source container, in the variable input I have just created the multiple copies of the same file and I have renamed them. Okay, so you can say that file 1, file 2, file 3 are in the folder 1, and the same files with different names are directly inside the source container. Okay, so I want to check what are the components of the source container, whether it is file, folder, everything. Okay, so for this I'm using get metadata activity. I'm going to say source, and I'm going to say variable input folder. Okay, variable input. Right now, if you see, if I just put a space, uh, sorry, put a backspace, it is going to ask me for a value, and I'm going to keep it as a simple space. Okay, for field list, I'm going to use child items. Okay, so let me validate and see. Okay, no child items. Okay, we have to go here and we have to say child items array, and for the value, here you can see everything that is there. So I am going to say get child items. Okay, so it is going to give me all the files and folders inside the directory that I have given in the get metadata activity. Now let me validate one more time. Everything is looking good. So before running the pipeline, let's go through one more time what we have done in this pipeline. We created two activities, get metadata and set variable. In the get metadata activity, we created a path where we are going to look for the child items. So we are going to look into source file system inside the variable input directory, and we are intending to get all the files and folders inside this particular directory as an output from the get metadata activity. Now, since it is going to be a collection, it is going to be a set of values. It is going to be stored as an array in set variable activity. So for that, we created a variable child items array inside the pipeline, and we pass the output of the get metadata activity to that array. Okay, now let me validate everything is looking good. Let me publish it. Publishing completed, and let me trigger this pipeline. Let's see. Pipeline, child items succeeded, child items set. Okay, so if you see get child items, it is giving you child items as an array. So you see, you have an array of, I would say, dictionaries. So here you have one element inside an array where you have key as name, and the value is the name of that file and what kind of file it is. So whether it is a file or it is a directory. So this is how you can use your child items activity to get the content of a directory in your storage account. Okay, now if you go and see the set child items, you see same thing has been assigned to our child items array. Okay, now when we go through if else, we will go through for loop in this particular data factory. We will learn how to utilize these outputs from the get metadata activity. But to go to that particular point, we must know how to use get metadata. Okay, so now we are progressing towards actual use cases. Right now I'm covering everything that is very basic in our data factory, because it is very important. These are the building blocks that you must know before you start working on the complex pipelines. Okay, so this was for today's session, and in the next session we are going to again pick up a new property from the get metadata activity list. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, and let's meet in the next session.